to, but we know only a little. More will be revealed. When I started Beyond Baroque, it was really a team. We had a lot of volunteers, in particular Jim Crusoe.
I was just out of college, and I walked by and I saw this dark.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center. Welcome to the Wanda Coleman Theater. My name is Quentin Ring. I'm Beyond Baroque's executive director. And happy December. This is a special day for us. It's, amongst other things, it's our last program of the year. We really wanted just to have a sort of community gathering, something very casual, something very relaxed and fun to sort of mark the end of the year. It's been a very busy year for us, a very good year. We've really done a huge amount of programming, welcomed hundreds and hundreds of writers and artists into the space over the course of the year. And it's nice just to gather with our community. But it's also a special event because we are celebrating the release of The Writing Life, 55 years of Beyond Baroque. And this is a release that has been long coming. We actually originally conceived this book, I think way back in 2017 when we were preparing for our 50th anniversary. And it's under a previous executive director, Richard Modiano, and The editors Rex Weiner and Liz Camfield really wanted to put together a book sort of honoring the community and just collecting memories of Beyond Baroque. Also having a sort of putting together a book that can serve as a source of inspiration for writers. So they wanted to put together, variety of writing prompts, and discussion of what it means to be a writer, and sort of put it all into one book that sort of mixed memories and little bits of history about Beyond Baroque with some more practical guides to being a writer. And it's really a beautiful book. Sort of members of our community who span generations, poets, but also prose writers, and also artists contributed, and I think it's a really wonderful collection of just sort of what makes up the community of Beyond Baroque. That said, it was put together a few years ago, and so the community has continued to evolve and grow even after the sort of final submissions were put together here. So we wanted to have an event release that sort of honored the book, but also welcomed in some voices that have started to become part of Beyond Baroque since then, and just generally celebrate the community. And so that's what we're here to do today. As we do get started, though, I do want to acknowledge Beyond Baroque's presence on unceded Tongva territory. We do recognize the wrong done to indigenous peoples through settler colonialism, genocidal practices, and it's very important, I think, for all organizations, cultural organizations, arts organizations, and otherwise to acknowledge our presence here on what is essentially stolen land. As an arts organization, we are committed to uplifting indigenous writers and communities, and to really celebrating their poetry, their narratives, their art, and their continued vitality within the cultural community that we exist to support. I should also say about Beyond Baroque, as we are nearing the end of the year, we're very much in our end of the year fundraising campaign. There is not a lot of support for the arts in the United States. It's actually very, very difficult to keep a space like this running year to year. That we do keep it running year to year has everything to do with our community. It's all thanks to you. So as we get to the end of the year, we do have a fundraising campaign. We're trying to raise $45,000 by the end of the year, which will go towards fixing up the space next year, paying poets and writers, and just generally making this space accessible to the community. So if you are not a member of Beyond Baroque, or you would like to renew your membership, it costs as little as $60. If you're a student or a senior, $75 is a regular membership. $100 is a dual membership, and then we have levels beyond that. You can see Nick in the bookstore. Sorry, I'm starting to I need to cough. You can see Nick in the bookstore about becoming a member. You can sign up online. Even if you can't afford a membership, you can, we certainly take donations as well. And we are going to have to start charging for most of our events next year. That's the way we did it for a long time. We tried to keep it open, accessible following the pandemic without charging. So we'll be charging for events next year, but if you do become a member, you will be able to get into our events, or almost all of our events, for free. So there is a really big benefit to becoming a member as part of that. So thank you for all of you who have supported us, and thank you for those of you who are able to do so again today. So just getting into it, what we're going to do is we're going to feature some readings of folks who are in the book. We have, I believe, 6 readers, and then after that, we're going to have a little bit of an open mic. We do have food for sale outside. Some sort of, it's really good. It's sort of a hybrid South African curry pizza vendor, and so I really encourage folks as we go through the program to go out, get some food, relax, hang out a bit. As I said, we do have the readings first, and then we have the open mic, so there'll be some sort of ebb and flow to the program. So feel free to make yourself at home and just hang out and do whatever feels most comfortable. But to start off with, we are going to welcome to the stage a legendary voice in the LA poetry scene, Michael C. Ford, who has produced a steady stream of print and recorded products since 1970. Henhouse Studios continues to publicize and market his recorded tracks, look each other in the eras with surviving members of the 1960s theater rock quartet most of you may remember as The Doors. A chapbook titled Populated Wilderness, in conjunction with Ion Drive Publishing, is being produced as a fundraiser for Lockwood Animal Rescue Center. His most recent collection of poetry and prose will be published by Mystic Boxing Committee Press. We're going to have an event for that next year. It was also his birthday yesterday. So please, everybody, welcome Michael C. Ford.
Wow, the last event of the year, is that what you said? It kind of feels like it, doesn't it? I mean, it's sort of I get a feeling of abandonment for some reason. I was invited by Beyond Baroque to compose two brief memoirs in honor of the history of this legendary literary arts foundation. The date on these two published memoirs is 2018, which turned out to be the 50th anniversary of Beyond B. So now, today, there's an occasion officially commemorating this long-awaited publication. And let me officially say happy birthday to Beyond Baroque. And Beyond Baroque, this is the 56th birthday for Beyond Baroque. And Beyond Baroque doesn't look a day over 55. And so it's just, well, right. So two memoirs. The first one was based on the question as to what guided me into writing. So here's my diary note on that. There is a salient ignition switch which informed my awareness of a need for personal self-expression by pushing a pencil across notebook paper, and it happened 3 years after serving an educational prison sentence in junior high school. One of the math teachers was requested to do an arc of poetry in the English curriculum. Now, this same instructor who was flunking me in arithmetic spent the next 5 days patrolling the aisles of room 109, reading her favorite poems. What followed this exhibition of some of the most boring, tepid, indecipherable, and disconcerting choices of what she had considered in her lack of imagination to represent world poetry is that she invited each of us to then compose poems emulating the British tradition, being, apparently, a format in which this clueless teacher convinced herself was absolutely the only way the art form of poetry could possibly be expressed. So, okay, long, agonizing story short. Having been thoroughly turned off by anything with the word poetry attached to it, I vowed never to either look at or listen to it again. As I say, 3 years later, by a set of serendipitous circumstances, I was invited by a Beverly Hills booking agent named Jack Hampton to attend an event at his emporium, the LA Jazz Concert Hall, north of the corner of Crenshaw and Jefferson Boulevards, where he was producing a December 1957 poetry jazz concert by a numinous tribe of poets and painters who were Beat Generation refugees residing at the beach in Venice West, most of whom were significantly represented by Stuart Z. Perkoff, John Thomas, Saul White, Lawrence Lipton, Jack Hirschman, just the full scene. And there I was. All this plus headlining the program was the man through whose maverick reputation as a scholar, a poet, and a painter many had been viewing as the progenitor of the San Francisco Renaissance, Kenneth Rexroth. Guessing, I really didn't have to, I'd have to urge the point that experiencing this full tilt epiphany, then close to a year later, being also mentored by the iconoclastic surrealist poet Kenneth Patchen between 1958 and 1962, It is understandably safe to conclude that by virtue of my studies with the two Kenneths, I couldn't have made the eventual decision to have become anything else other than a writer. And now answering the next question as to what was one favorite memory of Beyond Baroque, and here's mine. One of my fondest memories of Beyond Baroque has everything to do with my discovering it in 1972, when it was an art gallery on West Washington Boulevard, now named Abbot Kinney. One of the most conscientious and generous women I ever met was Alexandra Garrett. She had been a bright and innovative editor of that major force magazine of 1950s, 1960s literary Los Angeles coastlines. Having never strayed too far from publishing, she was donating her time now to assisting George Drury Smith, who was, at its inception, circa 1968, the sole founder of what was to come to be recognized as one of the most heraldic and inspiring literary arts foundations in the nation. One spring day in 1972, Sandy Garrett invited me to George's office space above the gallery area already designated as residence for the new Venice Poetry Workshop and what was to become a tradition on Wednesday nights lasting, as of now, for half a century. George and Sandy were in the process of typesetting and laying out a new issue of the flagship periodical titled Beyond Baroque. Through gracious urging by Alexandra Garrett, and so typical of Smith's hospitality, he asked me to let him see 4 of my poetic discharges. Surprisingly, he accepted all 4, placing them into print, and at that moment, worth years, allowed me to see for the first time a bulk of my work in a single publication. This recognition, for all intents and purposes, encouraged the Venice Poetry Workshop directors, John Harris, a poet and a mountaineer, along with Joseph Hansen, an author of several noir detective novels, and a poet, to invite me as opener for a recital by the redoubtable Harry E. Northup on a 1972 autumn night. And what also might be mentioned here is that it was an event representing only the second occasion I recited my work out loud in front of people. My first occasion for public recital was at the Cinematheque 16, currently the location of Book Soup on Sunset Boulevard, for 2 nights in June of 1969, an event arranged by Andy Warhol factory workers to raise dollars for Norman Mailer's campaign run for mayor of Manhattan, and in my personal world history, it was as close to a public validation as I could have had at that time been able to imagine. So what I guess I'm saying is, after close to 3 years, the generous and avuncular George Drury Smith was responsible for dragging me out of imposed exile and back into the indelible recognition. There will always remain deep gratitude for the caring and compassion nature of Sandy Garrett. And as realization persists, it was she who introduced me to Beyond Baroque, solid ground of contemporary literature, without which, through the last 5 decades, I would have never otherwise been associated. Thank you, Beyond Baroque, and God bless. Goodbye, everybody.
Michael C. Ford, everybody, and happy birthday. I do feel a special debt of gratitude just to the generations of people that have built this place. Many of them working long before I was even born, and so I was very glad to hear you speak about Alexandra Garrett, as well as John Harris and Joseph Hansen, and of course George Drury Smith, who's still with us. He couldn't be here today. I think George is 94. Do we know 96, something like that? But when I took over as director of Beyond Baroque, I said to George, who's a very humble person, I said, I'm really honored to follow in your footsteps. And he said, I really hope you don't follow too closely. But he's done some pretty heroic work here for many years. Next up, we have another very good friend of Beyond Baroque, Elena Karina Byrne, who is a Pushcart Prize and Best American Poetry recipient and author of several poetry collections, including No Don't and If This Makes You Nervous. Her poems, reviews, essays, and interviews can be found in Poetry, the Kenyon Review, the Paris Review, Plume, Bomb, and elsewhere. Elena has worked as programming consultant, poetry stage manager for the Los Angeles Times Festival of Books, the literary program director for the Ruskin Art Club. She's a brilliant poet, and she's also someone I always turn to if I need help with programming or just to contact the poet. And so she's a great friend of the space. Please, everyone, welcome Elena.
Hello, lovely, intimate crowd of many poets. Yeah, I've been doing this, I've been doing what Quentin does since 1991. So I'm in great admiration and understanding of how difficult it is to keep things going. So you guys are part of the reason why we keep things going. In addition, it'd be great if you bought the anthology. It's very nice looking, right? So I'm a native Californian, and my parents were native Californians. So I have a particular feeling of intimacy toward being here. And I always like to say that I'm a poet because my parents were artists. And just to give you an example, they were not conceptual artists. My father was a very famous art teacher, both at Otis Art Institute and Chenard Art Institute for a million years. And his students included Ed Ruscha and John Baldessari. And I saw Chris Burden covered in a tarp in the middle of the street when I was a young girl. So that gives you kind of a little bit of an idea of how my life as a poet began, because it began in images. And it will no doubt end in images, even though I write a lot of other things these days. Anyway, I do believe that once I decided to be a writer, I started to discover the perceptual means in which to discover and address ideation. And like Joy Harjo, I would say, I know I walk in and out of several worlds each day through this art, which is the art of both indirection and redirection. Some of my favorite quotes include, poetry is a pheasant disappearing in the brush, that's Wallace Stevens. A poem is a standoff, according to Marianne Baruch. Poetry is what you do to break bread with the dead, as Seamus Heaney said, and I would like to add to that, to also break bread with ourselves and with the realm of our world around us. The images create a permeable layer between what is said and what is felt, between what is known, what is unknown, which we know. It involves, though, a deep self-interrogation that perhaps relies on speaking the difficult language of intuition. But like painting, each image carries more than one allegory on its back. Each provides a visual space and means in which to open more doors and windows in the cavernous cinematic house of the brain. The individual yet universal story of what it means to be alive, to be human, to be here with all of you, told over and over and over until the heart sings us out loud. So with that, I'm just going to read two short poems that are Ars Poeticas, poems about the writing of poetry. The first one is, Poetry Substance Abuse is a Darwin Finch drawing. In motion, or air of abandon when you least expect it, much like when you say your next love will come to you when you least expect it. Your face stopping there at the equatorial bulge, because its pull is at the either seam and one continuous seamount ring of fire already put out on your tongue. leaving you somewhere vocabulary continuum caught on pause. The pause button, the same as the mute button, the same as all faith in God is no God, same as you are your last thoughts swallowed before spoken out loud to a tiny hand mirror, big enough for the bird cage thrown out in the alley trash heap, inside the involuntary dark inside your purse. What's now become more a consequence of gravity than feathers' defiance. Perfect is your animal shape's imperfection in the making, and your origin tangle, sweet physical chaos. Wake me to make whatever creates unequal harm. Now, this next one, I know Suzanne Lummis, our LA icon, who's here with us, will appreciate this. It's I Don't Make the Rules, a noir ars poetica. When dusk makes a break for it alone, and after a lie has been told to you so many times, you forget your own name. A man appears in a tuxedo, opens the glass door to say, welcome, welcome, without smiling, as he looks over your shoulder. I turn around to look too, since this is a motel and not a restaurant. The parking lot's almost as empty as my exhaustion, so I decide to stay and say nothing in case he has a gun and a mind made for all-nighters. I say this to you because the floor smells like old beer and grief. Once he hands me my door key card, I see a rat make himself at home behind the candy dispenser down the hall. Now I wonder what lives behind the ice machine that lights up at night like the one blue eye of hell as you lift open its tiny kiln-like door before reaching in with that small shovel tied to its black watch chain. I will anticipate the smell of cigarette smoke coming through the bathroom vent from the next room just after a couple has made their sprung bed into a comedy store of errors between their separate marriages. This makes it easy to invade their space. Raising the volume on the TV, after all, I'll find nothing worth watching but for a Dungeons and Dragons cop show where the villain is an orphan girl who gets, where the villain is an orphan who gets bloodied but free in one fell swoop, yet not without the cliche of falling in love with the wrong side of the bed, as we do. Thank you. Listen, thank you to all our readers. Thank you to Michael and the readers in advance. And I hope we all struck up a conversation at the end of this. So thank you, Quentin.
Elena Karina Byrne, everyone. Round of applause, please. And yes, the conversation, that's one of the very best things about this space is just the community of people. I mean, folks like Michael and Elena, I'm just so grateful to them for all the advice and discussions and just their presence over the years that I've been here. And that's also very true of our next reader, Will Alexander. When I first got to Beyond Baroque, way back in 2013, it's kind of hard to figure out what was going on here. There's all kinds of different poets. I was very new to the scene. Just took me a while to get sort of a handle on things. I wasn't the director. I wasn't even anyone important here. I was first a volunteer and was just writing some grants and trying to figure out how to raise a little money for Beyond Baroque. And I think the first thing that really sort of kept me here was Will, who is Beyond Baroque's, was and is Beyond Baroque's poet in residence. We would just sit and talk for, sometimes for hours in the office upstairs. And I think that was for me at least, a very sort of life-changing, ongoing series of conversations. Made me sort of understand, I'm not going to say why poetry matters, because I already had that sense, but maybe how poetry is larger than just the sort of, composing a few lines or sort of a narrow art form, but as something more all-encompassing. And so I've always been very grateful to Will for everything that I do here and for much more besides that. But just to tell you a little bit more about him, he was born in 1948 in Los Angeles. He's a poet, novelist, playwright, philosopher, visual artist, and musician. He has published over 24 books in a variety of genres and has earned many honors and awards, including a Whiting Fellowship for Poetry, California Arts Council Fellowship, the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Award, the Before Columbus Foundation American Book Award, and the 2016 Jackson Poetry Prize. He's also exhibited his artwork in group and solo shows. We have his show with Byron Baker upstairs right now. It's the final day of the show, so you should go check it out. His work is known for its visionary oracular surrealism and the influence of negritude. Among his publications are Divine Blue Light, Refractive Africa, The Combustion Cycle, and others. One of his early books, Asia and Haiti, was just republished basically this month, right? And he is currently the poet in residence at Beyond Baroque in Venice, California. He has lived his entire life in Los Angeles. Please, everyone, welcome Will Alexander.
Thank you for that intro, Quentin. And thank you all for joining today. And I wanted to read an excerpt from this book, Asia and Haiti, that just came out from Litmus Press in Brooklyn. And this originally was published by Sun and Moon here in Los Angeles. And this is the 30th anniversary of its publication, so it has survived. And what we all think about as poetry is surviving, not the tumult of the present, but the impassioned presence beyond eras. And I'm going to read from the first poem in the volume. It's two poems, one concerning Asia and one concerning Haiti. And I'll just do a small quote from Antonin Artaud and one from myself. This is by Artaud. You who are now imprisoned in the flesh, who know at what point in the carnal trajectory, its senseless comings and goings, the soul finds the absolute verb, the new word, the inner land. It's a small quote from myself. And the voice in this poem is a collective voice of rebellious Buddhist monks who hover in invisibility, vertically exiled in an implausible spheroid, fluorescently tinged, subtly flecked with scarlet, conducting astral warfare against the Chinese invasion and occupation of Tibet. Their originating zone, the Great Sera Monastery, a focal point of anti-Chinese feeling 4 miles outside of Lhasa. These are the voices of the monks speaking. By the way, China was invaded in 1950 by the Chinese forces. I was just in Beijing with the 75th anniversary of the Chinese Revolution of 49, but this is not taken into account properly in that history. And these are the monks speaking. Let us recall the illusion, the thousands murdered, the text exploded, the sun become a mechanical sub rosa. We, the once green wings of a magical Tibet, accused by the Marxists, by the exterior flames of ideology and assault, the insults, the curses, the fierce and poisonous scaling oars, endured, burned by general anthrax and demon. Yet we've emerged with our murmurs, with our saffron bleeding above the 12 elusive zones of the zodiac, with our bleak and tested fatigue, able to concentrate our blindings, our spectral condensation, to roaming steam, to tragic pints of venom, Our fate, ensnared by Chinese materia, by dyslexic simian diversion, by we of seeming maximal debility, the spiders swarming in our mantras throughout the canonical of purges. We exiled in this green electrical penumbra, looking down on this heinous monochromatic Pentecost, on Marxist grafting by furnace and foreclosure, pulled from our shrouded mantric chambers to do wonders for the scions, for the misanthropic wailing dolls, stunted in their core by brutality. These drab and scaly Marxists, plotted by erasure, by procedure, by burden, by churlish transposition of the conflagrant spirit son. This being our lot in exile, inside this magic vitrescent penumbra, spinning our prayer wheels above our leaking opium explodants, above our fulgurant supernal yeast. We spawn from the ethers by coupled monkey and demon, by incandescent boiling rods. So be it in this primeval penumbra, in this heightened vertigrous scarlet, in this analogical omniscience. It is we who break the bells wide open. It is we who signal the dead in their post-mortem frenzy with a turbulent flame of yaks, with dense and vital stuffing lynxes, with mixture by foreboding and conundrum. For us, this is path by treacherous lightning analogy, by magic and howling grass across the slow line. For us, the true interior Tibet of dark and irreversible surcease, tearing down the dialectical habitat with its structures from our darkened bond endowment, kaleidoscopic with vermin, with spells, with fabulous eradications and wildness. So we are ensconced, concentrated with non-rectangular, with savagery. We aspire to nirvana, to be left unsullied like vertical plumes from yurt on fire with potassics. We do not live in flotational scarlet to dwell on Mesozoic geology or speak of arguments and counter-arguments concerning instinctive erasure and existence. So we speak of the east-west direction of the Pamirs, or the Taurus Mountains along the southern edge of Turkey. It is the ligature of our ghost, of our prognostic blazes. We whose empiric is vapor, whose high cylindrical interior burns throughout rudimentary balance, throughout a transparent hemlock. We in this floating Bastian domain, squalid, hierarchical, frenzied, recall the leprous empirics of the Chinese invasion. Disheartened by brigades, the Dalai Lama recalls these three men in gray suits who looked extremely drab, communist with their bland, dehumanized debasement, with their freed material anger, with their vicious legitimates against Lhasa, against our wild and alien Sino burning, against our scrolls, against the singing of our daughters in judgment. Therefore, our flaming, our rooted sheaths, our Nargajunian strangeness, then the revolts, then the musics from our dungeons of blood. The Chinese demanded that we supply their troops with food. And according to the minister, Sepun Shikapkwa pushed our people to the very verge of famine. So we spat at them, sang rude songs about them, hit them with knots tied up in our prayer shawls. We from the Great Sarah Enclave, we, the first cycle of resistance, joined warlike combats so that bridges were destroyed, columns stacked, our actions in keeping with Nagarjunan relativity, with his asp-like sniping at chains of total domination. For we are a people who ceased to flinch as panic, we who faced on samba, on tea with rancid butter, our imparted barley compressed into bricks, our exports of gold dust and borax, for we breathe the fumes of heaven from our high plateau of camels, from our astral antelopes and leopards. We soar with convergent dilation, with the wizardry and stamina of sealing. We who hail from Songtsen Gampa, the Tibetan king who brought the first instinctive alonyms. Then we rose to high status among the Mongols. We who flourished at the court of Karakoram, then the refuge of Tsongkhapa, then the title of Dalai Lama conferred by Altun Khan. I could go on. You know, poetry is an intense activity that's hidden from public view. You don't know what's cooking in the alchemical thana of the body, of the psyche. So I thank Quentin and Beyond Baroque and everybody who's preceded and gone before to provide this refuge of intense contemplation. I've been able to, for the most part, do over 45 books. So thank you for Beyond Baroque, thank you for this reading, and thank you guys for being here listening. Thank you.
Well, hands everybody, please. And please do go upstairs to the Mike Kelly Gallery, check out Anonymous Stellar Ravines, which is the art show that Will and his artistic partner Byron Baker put together. It's really fabulous, and today is the last day that it's up. So next up, we have LA native Pam Ward, who recently, is this true, recently released her first poetry book, Between Good Men and No Man at All. Is that recently? Pam, are you? I was going to say, it's been a few years. Pam is the author of 2 novels, One Some Get Some, Kensington chronicling a heist after the '92 riots, and Bad Girls Burn Slow, also in Kensington, a tale of mother working funeral homes. A UCLA graduate and recipient of the California Arts Council Fellowship, and she's a Pushcart Poetry nominee. Pam edited the first anthology of Los Angeles Black women poets entitled The Supergirls Handbook. She's a very good, dear friend of Beyond Baroque, and she's always one of my favorite people to have read here on the stage. So please, everybody, welcome Pam Ward.
Usually I read something funny, but not today. I was thinking about the poets that have been here that have passed. Wanda Coleman, who I read with on this stage, Yvonne de la Vega, Marilyn Murphy, Michelle Serros, and last but not least, Nikki Giovanni. And, you know, when I read with her here, packed, it was weird because we sat and talked about poetry in the room, in the, you know, what's that little room over there? The bookstore. I'm trying to find a poem, so I'm stalling, because it was just there ready to go. And of course, oh, here we go. So I wrote this poem when I was in Paris, there's a cafe that James Baldwin started his literary Cafe de Flore was one of the places he hung out with some expats. So this is contemplating Baldwin inside Cafe de Flore. So it starts with a quote from James. For every James Baldwin, there are a whole lot of corpses, a lot of people who went under. That's what James said. Baldwin almost did it once, but decided to write a line, a poem, a passage, a stanza about demise, stopping the suicide lodged in his brain. This poet, this prophet of decomposed rhymes, imagined a rope around his throat, a private lynching of his own design, watching his knives conspiring with handguns, hunting for temples or wrists, hoping to end his chronic despair. Now I'm here, sitting in Baldwin's same chair, sipping a cafe au lait, imagining the expats discussing life. Langston Hughes, Delaney, Quality of Hurt, Chester Himes. If we must die, let it not be like hogs, Claude McKay. Dishing the field hands, the busboys, being the doormen of swine, a grave digger to just stay alive. Searching for morsels, a metaphor of the American pie, seeing the last bits of wine are gone to cold cafe. I see James and the same old noose inching toward me, wondering if life could give me a reason to mean, like Nicky Giovanni said, dodging bullets, washing blood from my bedclothes again, learning the trick to how Baldwin did it, this dance with escape, picking a pen instead of a blade. Thank you. So normally I read stuff like why my teeth sticks. He threw a typewriter at me from the upstairs front window. Now use that in a poem, you bitch. So I did. That's the kind of stuff I write. But anyway, this is what I wrote in the book. Beyond Baroque became my drug. I needed it to survive. Once a week, like clockwork, I climbed the red chip steps for my nightly session with words. I discovered the seaside oasis working clear across down at the Woman's Building downtown on Spring Street. I was doing a flyer for an event called Cross-Pollination when Wanda Coleman and Michelle Clinton walked in. These loud, down-home chicks were from my mom's hometown in Watts, and I loved them the minute I saw them. They told me they were performing at a literary facility called Beyond Baroque. Beyond Broke, I asked? It sounded like a check cashing service. No, honey, Wanda corrected in her megaphone speech. Beyond Baroque, she enunciated in perfect diction. It's a literary organization at Venice Beach. Venice was my ocean. I swam or watched dudes playing hoots and smiled at Z-boys selling weed. I'd been coming to Venice since junior high, when you could sunbathe a la natural in the buff. As a former writer for UCLA's Black Paper, I was eager to flex my writing chops, and I took the scenic route from my house, riding from Midtown to Venice to Lincoln, which is the best way to get to the west. Beyond Baroque sat on the north side of the street. It was a white stucco building mimicking a California mission, the kind of place built to colonize natives. I parked on the gravelly lot, walked across the deadbeat lawn, and entered a pitch black room. A man with an oxygen tank by his chair hosted a class where everyone sat in a circle. Bob Flanagan's Wednesday night workshop introduced me to a whole new crew. Fran Tsai, Beyonce's ex, David Weinrad and his film noir riffs, Viggo Mortensen and his clipped monotone rasp, and Daffod, who lived so close to the edge, I think he did a quick stint in prison. Hordes of great writers wandered in and out of the door, many like Scott Wanborg, who sang his swan song, then vanished, but I still hear his howl in my ears. I love the gallery. I love the bookstore. I love that they let anyone on stage with the nerve to sing poetry from their soul. Many of Beyond Baroque's writers sold their chapbooks in the store, and I hoarded these homemade gems in my hand like a 40-nighter panning for gold. One night, sitting on the steps, a Santa Claus-looking man told me his wife used to be a nun. His name was John Thomas, and he said he snatched his wife from a convent. Read Letters from a Young Poet by Rilke, he told me. I got the book and read the whole thing in one day. Who could resist a man who yanked a girl from God? We shared poetry like food, from Ashbery to Neruda, where poets sang gospels all over the page or pumped blood into your veins. Poets like Frankie Rios, who came and spoke the truth, and I was more and more hooked every day. The last time I saw Bob, he was in a hospital bed in Santa Monica Museum. Coughing, he tried his best to look upbeat, while a long one-line poem circled the room like a halo. When Bob was gone, I enrolled in Michelle Clinton's multicultural poetry workshop. I met Nancy Agabian, Maria Cabildo, and Michelle Serros, and we formed a poetry troupe called Guava Breaths. We performed all over LA, but debuted at Beyond Baroque, where we threw tampons to the audience with stanzas scribbled across the tube. Those were the days when tampons were covered in paper so thin you could roll a joint with it in a pinch. Although Sarah's son has said, I'll never forget her Rocky and Balboa voice, her Rocky and Bullwinkle voice, and her crazy poem about chicharrones. I mean, how can you forget a chick who writes a poem called Dead Pig's Revenge, examining her addiction to pork rinds? A few years later, I became a board member and stayed for 8 years, passing the baton to Michael Datcher of the World Stage, who helped create the literary series When Worlds Collide. Beyond Baroque will always be home. I busted my poetry cherry on its stage. I published my first poems when I found a flyer in their lobby for a poetry magazine called Caffeine. This was the 90s when poetry in LA was at its peak. This wave swelled so big people would pack in for readings, and the poets would stand in the street. Poetry had gotten me through the hardest aspects of life: death, divorce, the Rodney King beating, a riot so intense it flooded the streets, torching our entire skyline into pink and then receding like a wave going back to sea. Beyond Baroque saved me in the only way a person can be saved, in their spirit, healing like water after so many days gone dry, like a baptism or birth or a bath late at night, and like a dope fiend, I was hooked for life. Thank you, Beyond Baroque.
Pam Ward, everybody. Thank you, Pam. That was amazing. Next up, I believe, I need to give you got the microphone. We have Noel Alumit, who is a multidisciplinary artist who wrote the novels Talking to the Moon and Letters to Montgomery Clift. His most recent book is the short story collection Music Heard in Hi-Fi and Other Stories from Rebel Satori Press. He won the Stonewall Book Award from the American Library Association and the James Duggins Mid-Career Prize. He was named one of Out Magazine's Out 100 and was a California State Commissioner on Asian and Pacific Islander American Affairs. He's got a little bit of a more sort of hybrid special performance for you, so please everyone welcome Noel.
I'm not a natural-born writer. I'm not the writer who knew he would be writing from birth. I was that child with a well of stories deep inside him hoping to get out. Growing up, I didn't know any writers. No one in my family wrote professionally. No one encouraged me to write. No one in my neighborhood wrote. In college, no professor said I had a way with words or could have a future in letters. I was familiar with books, loved them in fact, but writing was a profession for other people. I believed this until friends began dying of AIDS. I started to write for therapeutic reasons. I was heavily involved in AIDS work, and feeling the grief that came with doing AIDS work in the early 1990s, I was handed a flyer for a workshop called Writing Your Way Out with Ayofemi Folayan, a Black lesbian writer who held creative writing spaces for queer people of color. Ayofemi was a large woman who quoted Alice Walker. One of her favorite quotes by Ms. Walker, "No one is your friend who demands your silence." In Ayofemi's class, we wrote about our feelings. We wrote about our friends dying. We wrote about our lives as gay people, or brown people, or immigrants. In the 1990s, as homophobes said gay people deserved to die of AIDS, there was a sense that we needed to write our stories down in all of our complex, intersectional ways as a form of resistance. How many people of color are on the New York Times bestseller list, Ayofemi asked. How many queer people were on it? At the time, none. Writing became a form of correcting a social injustice. In her class, I discovered that I did have a well of stories inside of me. Up until that time, I thought my life experiences were insignificant. I thought people wanted to read about Holden Caulfield, not a gay Filipino immigrant kid. Ayofemi said that wasn't true. Our stories were valuable and interesting. She taught those classes for years. Many students benefited. When she passed in 2014, no one wrote about her in the papers. I wrote something on my tiny blog, but that wasn't enough. And so I write this for her. Why did I become a writer? Because another writer said I should. Rest in prose, Ayofemi. Before I go back in the darkness, since we're talking about sharing a memories down memory lane, so I did my first reading here in 1998. Pat Payne was curating. We also had an open mic, and Scott Wanberg participated. And before I leave, I just want to say, let us make sure we tell the living writers how much we love them, how much we appreciate them. Thank you so much for all of your work. Thank you for all of your loneliness and your pain. Thank you for your unpublished work that will be published soon. Thank you. Tell a living writer you love them. Thank you.
One more round of applause for Noel, please. Thank you for that. So as I mentioned, this book was originally conceived and put together sort of 2018. And in the time since then, and I think this goes to Noel's point as well, this book is very much about memories, about the history of Beyond Baroque. But several years have gone by, and there's been a whole new generation of writers that have arrived here in the space and across the city. And so one of my great, things that I'm proud of about working here is being able to welcome in new folks to the space, new voices, people that are coming up as writers. And our whole staff has been a big part of that. So most of the people who work here are writers or artists of some sort. So I just want to shout out everybody, starting with our associate director, Jimmy Vega, first of all, who's a brilliant poet. His first book is getting published next year. And Yvonne Salinas, another wonderful poet, our programs manager, who really put all of this together. I want to shout out Eric Alberg in the booth. Jody Zalin, our web designer, who's not here, but is also a brilliant artist herself. Thank you. Our wonderful interns, Tyler Neufeld and Nick Foreman, as well as Rhiannon Silas Chavez, who isn't here as well. They're all great writers, artists, poets. But our last performer is also one of our staff members, Genesis Perez. They are a queer Chicana poet and performer from Oxnard, California. From 2019 to 2020, they were the Youth Poet Laureate of Ventura County. They released their debut collection of poetry, Flash Photography, in 2021. Perez has performed at Pack House, Beyond Baroque, and the Poetry Lounge. They've made a huge difference in this space, just as an employee, as a friend, but also as a poet and a writer. So please, everyone, welcome Genesis Perez to the stage.
I was about to say, Quentin, the book Flesh Photography, very different than the book Flash Photography. That's for different reading. Yeah, I love this place so much. The first time I read here was in 2019, and I was 17 years old, and I was scared shitless, and here's why. I was writing poetry and kind of performing poetry all throughout high school, but mostly because I had a turbulent couple of teenage years, like most people do, and therapy is expensive and inconsistent, so writing, why not? And all throughout high school, I was very focused and very determined. I was a student athlete, was a girls varsity wrestling captain, and I have the plate in my ankle to show for it. I was in the Marine Science Academy. I was in Muck Trial. I ran the Animal Rights Club and the Drama Club and the Avid Club and stage managed at the local theater, and I was very determined. I was going to sustainability panels, and I was like, I'm going to become a marine biologist and work for the Park Service, and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm not going to write poems. And I had this amazing mentor, Fernando Alberto Salinas, who was like, you know, Jenna, if you gave poetry just a single drop of the effort that you give wrestling, which has given you, as of this point in time, at least one concussion, sprained both of your wrists, your elbows, your ankles, snapped one in half. If you gave poetry just a drop of the time that you give to wrestling, you'd probably be kind of good at it. And it took my ankle snapping in half for me to go, yeah, maybe I should try something new. And so I got really, really into poetry in the time that I couldn't walk for like 3 months. And during that time, I was like, hey, maybe Fernando's kind of right. It's not like he's been teaching for 20 years. Might have an idea of what he's doing. And when I was 17, he was like, hey, my friend Matt Cedillo is putting on a series, and we're performing in Venice. You should join our group. And I was terrified because it was Fernando, Matt, Dr. Irene Sanchez, Angelina Sainez, and these are all people who are teachers and educators and poets, and they travel the world and they write books, and I was 17 years old and had stupid blue hair and had a really awful limp when I walked, especially when it got cold. And I was terrified out of my mind, but we performed here in this space, and my family came, and they were like, huh, you can really do that. And I was like, maybe I should try taking this poetry thing a little more seriously. So then I really took it very seriously. I became the Youth Poet Laureate of Ventura County, which is an incredible experience. And because I was part of the Youth Poet Laureate Network, and Quentin reminded me of this the other day, I actually read here virtually during the pandemic, and I completely forgot about it until Quentin brought it up and went, I was there, I put that reading together. And so up until at that point, the coolest thing I had ever done was read here. And then I got a job here. I don't know how I did it. I don't know who I prayed to and why it worked, but I desperately needed an internship to graduate college, and I was cold. I got to the point where I was just cold emailing organizations like, here's my CV, please take me. I want to graduate in 4 years. I don't want to be at this school anymore. I don't want to be here in Northridge where it gets 110 degrees in the middle of the day and it makes me want to sob. I'm from Oxnard. I'm from the ocean. I can't be this far away from the ocean or I'll die. And thank God Jimmy responded to my email and was like, hey, let's talk. And I was like, please, God. And so I came to the Southern California Poetry Festival and I was like, please, 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 please give me a job. Please, please, please give me a job. And it worked. And they haven't gotten rid of me yet. But outside of my sillier, more jovial aspect, I really do genuinely love this place. And being a part of a community that is like so diverse and creative. My papa, my dad's mom, frequently talks about like steel sharpening steel. He's like, you want to be around the people who are the best at what they do, who are going to push you to be even better than you've ever been. And that's what it's like being here. Is everybody here is so creative and so passionate and so intense, but also so giving. Everyone here really cares about each other and really cares about what they're writing and really cares about what they're doing. And this community has encouraged me to do all kinds of things, like go to other art galleries and go to concerts and read stuff that I would have never even thought to have read before. My degree is in recreation tourism management with a minor in sustainability, and it wasn't until I think April of this year that I went, maybe I'm not going to work for the Park Service. Maybe I am just going to be like, I hung on to that one for a while. And so like, it's amazing being in a space where people are just constantly like, no, like you have to check out this and you have to check out that. And so non-judgmental about it. Like, you didn't read Chaucer in college? Fine, fuck that. Have you read Wanda Coleman? It's amazing and it's brilliant. And seriously, being a part of this community, being a part of this space is so amazing. Please forgive me as I do the two things that I find occasionally a little tacky, which are tear up on stage and have my phone with me on stage, even though I'm not reading from it at all. But seriously, thank you all so much for being here, for being in this space and showing up for events over and over and over again, no matter how haphazard we are or how stressed out we are or how fucking cold this building is. Thank you so much for all being here and continuing to show up for everyone who's ever stepped in this space.
Another round of applause for Jenna, please, for all the work they do here also. So that's the last of our features, but I did want to say just a couple more words. Putting a book together like this, collecting memories, stories, history, it's a lot of labor in of itself. And I really just especially want to thank Liz Campiard, who did a vast amount of work on this as the editor. I can't see where she is. I think she's over there. As well as Rex Weiner, who's not here, Mariano Zaro, who is here, our whole publications committee. Thank you all for bringing this book into being. And so please do buy a copy of it in the bookstore. I think we're going to switch over now to the open mic. So thank you all for coming. There's lots of more poetry to come from the folks who are going to be reading. So maybe take just a brief break and then slide into the open mic, I think. So thank you all for being here. It's wonderful.
Hello, and if anyone wants to sign up, please let me know. We also have food in the back, so feel free to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back.
Please tell me there's no time to eat.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
10-minute break. 10-minute break. We have 4. What's up?
How you doing?
How are you, Dave?
Good to see you.
Good to see you, man.
I tried to get it last night. It looked like a good one, but I couldn't do it.
It's all good. It was packed house and a lot of variety for sure.
Yeah, I bet.
All right, let me put this on.
Poems come up within the body like breath, but breath is not a rupture. This is something they should diagnose you with. Language splits like a veil within the cell, a misplaced cytosine, a bridge that tangles, growth rising between cracks. My friend has a cancer within his head that can't be removed but must be pruned. The sidewalk bulges with tree roots. It is not about what we want to say. Thank you. And then I have another Ars Poetica, a different reflection on the same kind of feeling. I don't have a title for this one. A poem is the reaching into a gap, a discontinuity in language, not the repair, not the closure, the reaching, the rough place where hands catch and snarl. You could, yes, could repair, bridge, build stronger, but the poet also might tug a thread there and unravel deeper with guilty horror or malicious glee or the implacable calm of entropy or the resolute love of empty spaces. A poet is the instrument created to reach into these gaps, born from discontinuity of process. A poet is evidence of breakage. All the gaps we walk in are ciphers from the ones we came from. Listen, I could tell you more, but I am leaving this hole open for you. Your hands might want to taste it, define your shape against the edges of it. Thank you.
All right, AJ Luxton, thank you so much again, and great to hear you. And thank you for visiting the space. Yeah, maybe by the end of the decade, we can have a New Voices Beyond Baroque anthology. So yeah, be on the lookout for that one. Our next poet is Julie Daniels.
I made a deal with the muse, or I thought I did. Instead of waking me up at 3 in the morning, why don't we try after a full night's rest? And this is what came out the other morning. This is called I Dream of Poetry. Rivers full of chocolate, animals whose language I do speak. Poetry of all kinds, the large, yes, the small, but never, ever meek. I dream through poetry of an America like the one that grew me up, 4th of July parades and justice rising up and up and up. I dream of poetry. Like Emily Dickinson did, not in that grim and crotchety way the English teachers taught, but full of wild nights and black cake that fueled erotic, not just thoughts. I dream in poetry. Unformatted and free, this country isn't ready to see a woman be president, then what the hell does that make me? Invisible? Silent? Clipboard in hand? I'm none of those things. I am what I am. Passionate and tearful, full of joy and deep regret, open-hearted and outraged, nothing ever preset. I've laid down with scoundrels and howled at the moon when life changed abruptly and poems flew out of my living room. I dream in poetry. Yes, the leaves and the grass. Oh, captain, my captain, on sultry summer days. Oh, captain, my hero never fades. Night's cloak encircles me, stars glimmer through my back door. Love and light surround me. It's poetry I'm here for.
Thank you for that beautiful poem, Julie. Thank you. All right. Our next poet is Tyler Newfield. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. Sometimes fate works out in a funny way. I'm so glad you went before me and not after, because this actually stems from the one and only time in my life I've dreamed in poetry. It was about 4 years ago. I woke up from a nice little nap on my parents' couch and wrote it down, and then that turned into 28 poems consecutively that all come together to form this larger epic fantasy narrative in a world similar to, but not quite like our own. This is the prologue for The Sun Has Fallen. Heaven and hell are no longer. They've left their stations and come to earth. The winter's colder, the summer's stronger, the sun's so hot that it melted the needle atop the pointed cross of the highest steeple of the church. The metal drip drop down, the young ones watch from the bottom ground. As little eyes look up, the sun bashes down on their faces, their hearts are all crisp and their skins burn to ashes, and they float away in the wind to the graveyard filled with the people who've sinned. Ghosts, oldest and youngest child, stand facing the storm, their faces wild, and they turn their backs from the bashing sun and they run. Off in the distance, the ghosts sang and laughed. It was heaven that made them laugh like that, but the living know they were still facing the sun, disease and rot and the devil's gun, and they knew that there was only one escape, off to the graveyard where ghosts await. All races gray, all colors pale, flowing and fleeting beyond the veil. Death was dangerous quite, but the only way to reach heaven who'd fallen away from her place. Heaven had fallen, hell would follow, making hollowed shells of people even more hollow. Hell had risen with that falling sun, the king himself, and he'd brought his gun. Oh, I thought I had it memorized. I'm gonna get my phone. Thank you. This is my first time actually performing this, really, showing it to people. Thank you. Okay, where's I at? Hell had risen with the falling sun, the king himself, and he'd brought his gun. The ghostly queen will soon have to fight the ruler of hell, the day versus night. Only one will win, it's too early to tell. They're building their armies and training them well. So choose your side, the sun's bashing rays or the winters that freeze your soul each day, the church and its needle, the drip-dropping steeple, the hole that the metal had ripped in the sky, the ashes that float as the wind howls by, or the graveyard filled to the brim with her ghosts, filled with the sinners who never mattered the most. Thank you.
All right. Superstar Tyler, marketing intern, currently at Beyond Baroque. Such a pleasure to be working with him, all the way from Bakersfield, now in LA. And yeah, looking forward to more. Probably catch him in May here at the Wanda Coleman Theater with the Untitled Theater Company, and they got an amazing play in a store for us. So stay on the lookout for that too. Our next poet is the one and only Dig Wayne.
Thank you so much. It's always wonderful to be here. I grew up in the Midwest in Ohio. This is all about some of that stuff. It's called Bullet Holes in Stop Signs. I went back to Ohio to dig my roots out of the walls and fields and missteps, giant steps, girlfriends pregnant with hope and trust and baby teeth. Factory sweat hid muddy tears, cloudy ditches, axle-snapping pothole complexions drunk with anger, sad sack cornfields dancing with overweight scarecrows that bring thunderstorms to their aching knees. Handcuffed with blue hot roach clips, celebrating Christmas Eve in the city jail. I'm 18 and I like it. Banquet of rubber eggs and deep-fried couch potatoes as my mother cried for my protection from two-lane country chicken feathers. Bleeding Madras pendants staunch the flow of uneducated guests, while pert prom queens sit on the face of the courthouse clock, waiting to inherit the keys to the comfortable. Shotguns, deer rifles, and BB guns harmonized to bro country before it was invented on stock car radios, skidding out of control on rock salt, cancerous melodies. Flowers smell of gunpowder. My reflection has never been so dear. I remain over my own shoulder. Thanks. This is from Ohio as well. It's called a jailbird seed. There he'd be all Saturday afternoon, fried and do-rag to commotion, dipping, tipping, sipping, dripping with larceny. Mohair railroad tracks pulled right up beside the sugar factory, broadside barn door, kidnapping all the soft beans and clicks. His alibi bled with the plurality, leaving single digits holding the mugshot at arm's length. His deportment comprised of mentholated celestial ether. Kept his hands off the wheel and no prints on the till, cracked toilet seats, sand, backdoor jitney to heaven, luxurious getaway carjacking, hot wire, burn, rubber scalp scarred neighborhood hero. Pop the clutch and slide over the handlebars because mom's buck teeth got beer breath under the weathered flip-flops crisped as purloined Doritos. There he'd be hiding in the wall clock playing daddy as the whole house took the belt for his sticky plimsolls. Butter a whole loaf of Wonder Bread with marginalized zeitgeist. Jingle belt, jingle your back and thighs. Lipstick, heirloom, brass knuckle diary sitting on top of the bars, nibbling at a curated future of lost episodic. Thanks.
Dick Wayne, everybody. All right. You could actually find maybe one or two books of Dick Wayne in the bookstore right across the hall. So check it out, and maybe Dick has some copies on him. But always good to see you. Usually hanging out with the Highland Island crew. And shout out to Ingrid and Maestro, also great poets. Our next poet is actually the feature of the open mic. Some of you heard some stories of Genesis Perez, who's a bookstore seller, and also I started out as an intern. Many of us have started that way, and the space just kind of calls to us, and we remain here till they kick us out. So it's our time to do a coup. But their poems are amazing, and it's just going to be a pleasure to hear you. And they also have a new zine out, as I said, and we are blessed with the presence of the Ventura County Youth Poet Laureate. So give Genesis a warm welcome and take it away.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all so much for sharing. Poetry is kind of like one of those pizzas you get from Costco. It's meant to be shared. I guess you could eat the whole thing by yourself, but then you're going to feel a little sick and dizzy for a few hours. Will Alexander is not in the room, but I'm hoping he's in the building, at least cosmically. If you've ever sat and had a conversation with him for more than 5 minutes, you know what that means. But one of my favorite poets of all time is Diane de Prima, and I was reading her book, The Poetry Deal, when we went up to San Francisco, and she has a poem dedicated to Will Alexander in there. And I ripped the line structure from that and wrote something entirely different. So this is, when the guy in the club tells you that that Diane de Prima poem is too repetitive, read him this. After Diane de Prima, you think you could love me better. My queer devil angel apartment complex shoulders can carry, sigh, cry, squat rack. A fear of human compassion and compression. My queer devil angel apartment complex shoulders. My heaviest battles have already hospitalized me, baby. I can carry, sigh, cry, squat rack. Watch me turn callous into contact, into contract, into cardiac. My heaviest battles have already hospitalized me once. This braggadocious nature is brought to you by our sponsors. Watch me turn callous into contact, into contract, into cardiac. Someone tried to kill me on the PCH, but I still got drive. This braggadocious nature is brought to you by my ancestors. A long line of tough-ass women, do not test them. Someone tried to kill me on the PCH, but I still got drive. I can't deny. I am a piece of the larger picture. A long line of tough-ass women, don't mess with me. We've made it to the oral presentation. How clear is your diction through a mouth full of blood? I can't deny. I am part of a bigger picture. Frame it, hang it, put it on the wall. We've made it to the oral presentation. How clear is my diction through a mouthful of blood? This head ain't just for button, it's pretty too. Might as well hang it, frame it, put it on the wall, and why stop there? This head ain't just pretty. It's for budding, too. I got a grandma's fight and a grandson's audacity, and why stop there? I'm taking my whole family to the top with me. I got a grandma's fight and a grandson's audacity, a feat of human compassion and compression. Take it all in, give it back tenfold, and you think you could love me better than I love myself. Don't leave your friends in a goth par. A girl will explain The Cure and Diane de Prima to them if you leave your friends unattended in a goth bar. That is a threat. I just put out a zine called Sudden Feminine Urges. I identify as gender fluid, but I was assigned female at birth, so I have a really weird and long, complicated relationship with femininity and how to express it. And this summer, I kind of fell in love with femininity and the idea of womanhood again, and I wrote a lot about that. And one of the pieces in here, there's also a lot of collaging going on, goes like this. Your girlhood is calling attention to yourself. Your girlhood is looking up, saying, did I do it right this time? Did I do it the way you wanted me to? I don't miss it. It doesn't call to me. I think there's something wrong or broken in my school. Did my girlhood try to kill me, or did you? All bows and lace and ribbon and garrote. I have another smaller piece in here that was based off of a prompt I got at the California Poets in the Schools conference I did last year. I was given the word miasma and how to use it in a poem, and I created a series of acrostic pieces, and this is one of them. Mother, may I be the violent thing that rips me from my senses? Assassinate the connection between my body and soul? Sorry, I can't hear you. Right now, I'm drifting away. My nothing is everything, and everything escapes me. So those are the two from the zine I wanted to share. Thank you, thank you. I have like 2-ish more if you'll let me, and if not, Yvonne will throw something from across the room at me and hopefully hit me in the head. And if he doesn't, we get to laugh at him. This is, I think that sounded like a threat or a promise, I'm not sure. Can't tell the difference. This is a poem that I'm doing in chunks. This is the first chunk. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you listen to all of them. This is in your 20s. You're in your 20s. Your life is a series of rooms. Some you never want to go back to. Some you're banging on the door to be let in. Some only exist in the sun-drenched past. Don't you want to crawl into the canopy of blankets of your lost love's room and find them there, soft smile, soft shoulder to rest your head on and beg that this time they stay? Don't you want to be wrapped up in a blanket on your grandma's bed while she sketches flowers at her desk? You won't let yourself be sick anymore. At least until you find a woman who loves you without fear and you get so sick you start to scare her. There's a boa constrictor in your childhood bedroom squeezing the life out of a rodent. You were the rodent, or you were once a snake, weren't you? Writhing on the floor for men to watch. You won't let yourself be small anymore. Even when you feel like the rodent, you are the snake. You are the crack of bones in the dark. That is not a hyperbole. My childhood bedroom is currently the home to 6 boa constrictors. I wish I was kidding. I wish that was hyperbole. I've heard it, it's amazing. I wrote this right after the election. This is writing about death / people dying / first on my list. The first on my list is the spray tan, fake hair, fake air, faker, who sold my cousin an American dream before he died. Do you know how many Latino men die from cirrhosis of the liver? Do you know how many Latino men deny their blood, betray their last name and their martyr jaw in the name of Americana? Do you know to be Mexican American is to be neither until the Americans want to make money off of you? Yes, Mr. Billionaire, I'll buy your American flag and your bleach blonde sex doll and your lifted truck and your branded Bible, and when I'm done praying to your mogul father, I will drink until I can't feel the ghosts anymore. Do you know how many die in the desert every year? Do you know burial without a tombstone? Do you know burial without a prayer? Do you know how many ghosts we have? Oh, I want to choke you with unprayed contrition. I want to choke you with rusted barbed wire. I want to choke you with the bottle that killed my cousin. Do you know how you lingered over my dinner table like a ghost? Do you know your name was an act of violence in my house? Do you know I want to hold your name like a trachea in my teeth? I have one last one, and then I get to do the super douchebag thing of running out here and not watching the rest of the reading, because I have to run the bookstore. Come buy a book, or maybe tell me I'm a douche to my face. This is Brother Pixie, except there's a slash between the BR and the rest of the word brother. So it comes out to Br/other Pixie, which I was really proud of myself for thinking. I swear to God, it looks cooler on the page. And thank you all so much for being here. Please keep sharing and enjoying each other's work. You have to write everything by hand now. Get swallowed by your ring finger callus in occupational therapy. Chicken scratch is a verb here. Why do we grow wings if we never fly with them? Why do we collect lovers if we never lie with them? You don't stretch your wrists before you draw anymore. Have a contradiction, kiss the sore spots. Was I supposed to write about you, or was I writing about myself the whole time? Why do we grow wings if we never fly with them? Why do we welcome brothers if we can't die with them? You with the wind chime walk and cacophony hips, I was supposed to do anything under your Fitzgerald stare? Whistle a short prayer for you to find this flattering, and we continue a long exchange of words. How do we grow wings if we never fly with them? Why do we wake plans if we never try with them? You stand on the train track with your high school blues. Someone should have just told you it runs in the family, and maybe then you'd spend more time seeing other people's ghosts instead of your own. Thank you all.
right, Genesis Perez walking out. All right. As they said, they're going to be in the bookstore, and we have a great variety of genres, but we definitely specialize in poetry, so definitely something for everybody. And let's keep it going. Our next poet is Daniel Dissinger. All right.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Beyond Baroque. It's always an honor to be here, and the last time I was here was like 2017 or something like that. So this is called Re-Spirit. 1. Dear Spirit, there are these scars to talk about, their depth like a collection of prose poems with no punctuation, like how his throat searches for space to rest near this bed of humming yellow tulips, an image rooted in his belly. This translates to what touches softly on his mouth at night into haiku while meditating. Naked spirit, how can poeming feel so natural and foreign at the same time, like hairline fractures dance throughout his ankles and fingers? How it can feel like a betrayal to weave a lifelong metaphor with no intention of ever finishing. How can the mere languaging of poet be like choking on water? 2. Spirit like spiritual, like ritual, like be grounded in self. Spirit like light, and light like ocean, like knowing it's all ocean, all naked, to collapse at the sight of self, free from shame like proud, wild bonsai tree, like exposed amethyst, radiates all afternoon, like spirit free, spirit released, spirit. 3. In the distance is mountain, and beyond mountain is ocean, and where we're attempting to reach is beyond an edge, beyond vision, beyond touch. Like when light slows to a single fraction of human understanding for a split second to reveal whatever will shatter our three-dimensional perception of body, of mind, of language. Like thousands of attempts to capture the essence of her nudity while afternoon sunlight pours slow across her thighs in any sort of language, like lost happily at sea. There's how we accept the circumstances of these bodies, to hear music and absorb art and write poetry and leave them to travel like quartz crystals fill the room with oars. We find ourselves a collection of vibrations, just momentarily contemplating gravity because we're consciously defying its desire to anchor us to these constraints. This is our nature, our wildness, our internal and cosmic wilderness. How a forest cracks at the seams of all this oxygen, and his chest reaches out to swallow its history, to get lost in the circuitry of these mushrooms' mathematics. As wild as synergetic moss blankets the ground, and we wish to be swaddled in it all. This song of self, this quadratic ballet, like a continuum of dreams, seems so simply human. In the morning, he wipes away a lifetime of tears from his face. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and welcome back to the space, and thank you for sharing these 3 poems. We have a few more in the list here, but some folks just walked in. There's still space if you want to read. So afterwards, I think we can just do a raise of hand and call your name. So let's go with Jeff Graham. All right.
Thank you. Well, nothing is completely coincidental. Like someone mentioned, I think it was Tyler, about the dream poetry that you read, Julie, and now I'm following Daniel, and I see the poem as a short one. It's kind of a song to poetry, which is, I think you mentioned as much in your poem. So it's called a proposition. A proposition. To impart knowledge is the greatest gift to one's own self. For to teach, after all, is its own reward. A way of learning about both subject and object, while opinions clarify and continue to crystallize, just as the cocoon unravels around its own quarry to reveal the incipient butterfly. So a lesson plan tends to shape itself as it goes and goes on, responding to all those inputs, feedback loops, and correspondences in marvelous testings of suppositions, theorems, and provisos, ultimately to be free, to land propositionally, represented again and again anew. Thank you.
West Side local, Jeff Graham, and the answer lies in your dreams. That's what I've learned so far. My dreams are crazy. I don't think I've written so much about them in poetry. I'm scared to do that, so getting some courage here. But our next up is Nicholas Foreman. Let's get it up.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Lovely to hear all of you. Yeah, this is a prose poem called Russell. I felt summer start yesterday as my skin burned and licked itself. I was watching these short men play soccer in the park, and I joined them to practice firing shots into the net. All of mine flew over. So it is summer, and it has only started, and my dog is choosing to die. My dad was telling me how when he takes Russell into the backyard, the stray cat no longer runs away. It watches closely and calmly. Sickness in entirety. Russell walks into walls, but is not trying to pass through them. His breath is long and heavy, pulling his neck down. He has forgotten how to bark. Russell walks into walls and into corners, and instead of trying to turn around, he tries to walk through them again. But he is not trying to pass through them. He is stuck in a Groundhog Day of falling down the stairs. As we rescue him, the steps look crueler than ever, like they were only ever designed for his failure. Outside, we put sheets of plywood on top of the rose bushes, because Russell keeps walking into them, getting stuck and cut. I lifted the plywood up just for a moment and watched the beetles eat the yellowing flowers. Russell sits in front of the pool, looking into the water. His eyes are more than glassy. Brown slime drips and crusts from them onto his fur. This isn't passing away, and it isn't fighting either. His chest inflates on one side only. Maybe that's what's left of him, and everything else is a tumor. Russell walks into walls, and all he has left is a smell of wood and dust. Thank you.
Interesting, thank you. Yeah, Nick is also part of the Beyond Baroque team, and you'll find him here from time to time. If he's not here, he's probably at USC, probably doing Instagram videos or listening to CDs. But thank you, and it's great to hear you. Next up is our tech master and great friend here at Beyond Baroque and also publisher of the Venice Beachhead. I think we ran out of copies of this past issue, but it is one of the longest running community newspapers I know of, at least since 1968. And Herrick has taken a hold of that. And yeah, I think he's here to share something. All right, Herrick Albert.
1, 2, 3, yes. So I'm going to do I'm doing a cover poem, and it's hard to call this is a George Carlin piece. So it's hard to call it a poem, but on the other hand, his command of language in this I really love. So it's called A Modern Man. I'm a modern man, digital and smoke-free, a man for the millennium, a diversified, multicultural, postmodern deconstructionalist, politically, anatomically, and ecologically incorrect. I've been uplinked and downloaded. I've been inputted and outsourced. I know the upside of downsizing. I know the downside of upgrading. I'm a high-tech, low-life, cutting-edge, state-of-the-art, bi-coastal multitasker, and I can give you a gigabyte in a nanosecond. I'm new wave, but I'm old school, and my inner child is outward bound. I'm a hot-wired, heat-seeking, warm-hearted, cool customer, voice-activated, and biodegradable. I interface with my database. My database is in cyberspace, so I'm interactive and I'm hyperactive, and from time to time I'm radioactive. Behind the 8 ball, ahead of the curve, riding the wave, dodging the bullet, pushing the envelope. I'm on point, on task, on message, and off drugs. I've no need for coke and speed. I've got no urge to binge and purge. I'm in the moment, on the edge, over the top, but under the radar. A high concept, low profile, medium range, ballistic missionary. A streetwise smart bomb, a Top Gun bottom feeder. I wear power ties, I tell power lies, I take power naps, I run victory laps. I'm a totally ongoing Bigfoot slam dunk rainmaker with a proactive outreach. A raging workaholic, a working rageaholic out of rehab and in denial. I've got a personal trainer, a personal shopper, a personal assistant, and a personal agenda. You can't shut me up. You can't dumb me down because I'm tireless and I'm wireless. I'm an alpha male, I'm beta blockers. I'm a non-believer, I'm an overachiever, laid back and fashion forward, upfront, down home, low rent, and high maintenance. I'm supersized, long-lasting, high-definition, fast-acting, oven-ready, and built to last. A hands-on, footloose, knee-jerk head case, prematurely post-traumatic, and I have a love child who sends me hate mail. But I'm feeling, I'm caring, I'm healing, I'm sharing, a supportive, bonding, nurturing primary caregiver. My output is down, but my income is up. I take a short position on the long bond, and my revenue stream has its own cash flow. I read junk mail, I eat junk food, I buy junk bonds, I watch trash sports, I'm gender specific, capital intensive, user friendly, and lactose intolerant. I like rough sex, I like tough love. I use the F word in my email, and the software on my hard drive is hardcore, no soft porn. I bought a microwave in a mini mall. I bought a miniman at a megastore. I eat fast food in the slow lane. I'm toll-free, bite-sized, ready to wear, and I come in all sizes. A fully factory-equipped, hospital-tested, clinically proven, scientifically formulated medical miracle. I've been pre-washed, pre-cooked, preheated, pre-screened, pre-approved, pre-packaged, post-dated, freeze-dried, double-wrapped, and vacuum-packed. And I have unlimited broadband capacity. I'm a rude dude, but I'm the real deal. Lean, mean, cocked, locked, and ready to rock. Rough, tough, and hard to bluff. I take it slow. I go with the flow. I ride with the tide. I've got glide in my slide. Driving and moving, sailing and spinning, jiving and grooving, wailing and winning. I don't snooze, so I don't lose. I keep the pedal to the metal and the rubber on the road. I party hardy, and lunchtime is crunch time. And I'm hanging in there. There ain't no doubt. I'm hanging tough. Over and out. George actually lived in Venice and the Venice canals here for a long time, so he did a lot of his work here. George Carlin. He's published 4 books, which have things like this in it, so he's a wordsmith, I call him.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Round of applause. That was a IT poet core right there. I loved it. I loved it. Okay. Our next poet is Jason Atlas. In the room? Yeah.
Perfect. My wife gets to follow me after. I'd like to read a couple poems I have. I wrote this one while working at a fine dining Italian restaurant where there was not a single Italian person to be seen. Great food is touched by heavenly fingers, from branch to branch picked from their anchors. Southern souls reach for salvation, surpassing orientation. Now one and the same, not fame they seek, but to tame a flame of disarray, by which one drowns in the river Styx of one's sorrows. Take heed. Burroughs spoke of dead badgers and killers, how one sat to enjoy the fire, the other shot at the soiled earth of Cain, which now bear fruit of white vinegar. Fingers linger millimeters above skin, wind between walls of flesh. Once pressed flows milk from Gaia's breast. And this next one I wrote back when I was a bachelor, and how every soul you meet on the street was the love of your life. The sun drapes over her face, golden curls of Eden's mane. Introductions gathered, names gained. You spoke of dreams and its divide with the breeze. What ease it was to speak. The seams of your eyes, the white of the pearl. How time stilled and blitzed. An orchestra of the streets played. With each breath, a hurried tango of the palate to tap on the teeth. I must leave you for the sea at past 3. And so a totem I kept, a totem of chance encounteries, a nod and a wave, and once again, the breeze. And to round it out, I will read something I wrote on our way here. My wife holds our child in an embrace of garden green. She sips at her coffee, slipping loose the delirium of a 6 o'clock wake. Our child sleeps now on her breast, punctual in his adoration, his eternal longing to always be apart. It is in this dream we fold into as men and women, as embracers of chaos and intrigue, of the quiet moon and its light on the edge of yesteryears. We come to find our child's love. To us I cheer. To whom I seek, to him I need. All right, thank you. Wow, that's fancy. This next poet I know very personally because we have created a child together, is named Zoe Atlas, who, to give a little background for her, she has performed at the Monterey Poetry Festival. And to be very biased, I am her #1 fan. And keeping it short, she's fantastic, and I'm really glad that everyone here gets to experience her poetry.
Thank you, Jason. Got a couple firsts today. The first time I'm performing with a phone in my hand. It's not my style, but I decided to do this about 20 minutes ago, so this is all I've got. And the other one is with my child on me. So this is his first as well. And I wrote this poem a few years ago when I first answered my calling to be a birth worker and was really coming into unpacking a lot of what we carry as women and what we carry in our bodies. And this poem is called I Want My Future Daughter to Know, though after reading a page in a book last night, I might be changing that title. I want my future daughter to know how her mama refused to use the names interjaculated upon her body like war flags flapping erect on carved up colonized slices of the new world. The geography of the female physiology infested eponymously by white men. Let this stanza be the final resting spot of Ernst Grafenberg, never a spot but a cynosure glistening in the galaxy of her pleasure. Gabriele Fallopio once named the egg's corridor to the womb trumpets of the uterus. He must have heard the enormous fullness her fertility blares like the pulse and prophecy, sounding in boundless waters, like Miles Davis tattoos on souls in blue and green. Life begins here. The first time I spoke aloud the word vagina, fricatives splitting my lips, my tongue, crooks and forks forcing all the wrong sounds to speak to the sacred portal between my thighs. Military metaphors, men maraud her body a battlefield. Did you know vagina means sheath, scabbard, a holster for a sword, the female pelvis butchered? So she bleeds and she forgets. Lunar tides, ancient manifesto, these cycles, her divine flow, desired to grow, designed to be undone by the pull of her own perfection. I bleed and I gather dreams, find a language lost with wet words. My voice is the wildest thing I own, born when I choose to move like water. But the most beautiful words cannot be spoken, cannot be written, rather they are unearthed by the beat of breath through body. I rest my finger on the place where I vanished, where the language I inherited mutilates the oracles etched on my bones, dissolved in my blood. My longing, listen to her, be very still. Life spirals, language sometimes means losing yourself in the fire of a murderous mouth. If she's taught me anything, always be reborn. Thank you.
Poetry couples. Viva el amor. All right. I think we are done with this list, but who wants to read next? We have here Laura Cermeño. All right.
Hello, that was adorable. This is my first with my son hearing my poetry. River. So this is something River told me, I think, before he went to bed, the title of it. I love you until the world ends and God dies. No exaggeration, just my little king and his big feelings for his mother, Queen. He struggles to understand forever, but he describes time past it. How obscene for the queen to forget her dreams, to love you past it, to have you stand in for a figment and a fraction of the time, stand in for a waste. Why do you roam the streets when we have love at home? There's nothing like this love, no need to draw comparisons. I live in the world where God never dies and my love never ends. I have not, these are all new and I have not read them. They're unperformed. Subterranean feelings. I write to kill, excavate with the words, the feeling they wrote as slurs. What you said last night to me was disturbed. I didn't know how to react, so I didn't. I left you unheard, waiting to be seen. Your type of love is so pristine, it feels so faint before it's felt. It feels like death before I melt, before the first nuclear bomb on our tomb. And all this violent talk to overwhelm, to coo, to calm, to numb, all of your casual dating just for fun. All the girls you think are dumb, waiting so long to succumb. Your worst fear to admit you feel. You're real and human and dumb too. I still think that God made you meet me, feel God-like presence for once, since you're so scared of your own. You're made of stone, made of stone, made of stone. Stoic as I know, as I'm drawn to. Stoic as a survival skill. Become the steel, the metal you need, the rebar, the faulty enforcement. That's that. And I have one more. That's a love poem. Okay. I'll hold you without holding you down. A promise. I love you in the way I don't treat you as a possession. I love you so much I don't want to keep you. My love distracts you from the other love. The other love wants to own, wants to change, wants to keep track of you. I love you when I don't know where you are, but I trust you're in my heart. I love you when I don't know who you're with. I just want to be with you again. I love you because I know you are not mine, but you're in my thoughts every day. You're not a prisoner of my love. My love is a freedom to you. My love is all the love on your birthday. My love is sharing the stage. My love is relaxed in the knowing and the not. My love is saying we can go as slow as possible, as slow as your first slow dance. My love is a chance with you, algo contigo. My love is a butterfly and never crushing its wings. My love is a peace as the butterfly sits on my shoulder, drawn to me, drawn to the acceptance of me, drawn to the aura, the taste, and the touch, drawn to someone who loves you so much. It feels like effortless breath. Drawn to the mystery, the uncertainty, the feeling, the not knowing, the flow of you plus me is free.
Thank you so much, Laura. And also, Laura will be doing a full set as part of the Mobile Data Mag reading that we're having January 25. So it's going to be one of our first programs in the new year in 2025. And they'll be reading with a really, really great lineup. It'll be hosted by publisher Jesse Tovar, and we'll have Daryl Cousin, Pam Concepcion, Mauricio Soul on Fire Moreno, and Jennifer Baptiste. So they're all emerging poets, and they'll keep the flame going in LA. So really excited for that. I see Rhiannon Cielos Chavez here. Do you want to read, Rhiannon? All right, let's give it up for Rhiannon.
All right, thanks Yvonne for volunteering me again. I'm gonna read a flash fiction piece called A Greater Swamp Than Yours, after Daniel Bailey. God sits at a booth in a diner on the edge of a desert. Tuna Melt Classic on the way, and Nicolas Cage just hissing into his Coke, spitting up foam, and gosh, he really hates his children. He doesn't believe in love and doesn't believe in government. He thinks God is government, and there is no love in the way things get run here on Earth nowadays. The truth is, Joe Biden just wants a hug, a tuna melt. But this desert doesn't exist, and neither does this sandwich. He will never be hugged. Nicolas Cage will never be loved. You, Nicolas Cage, the most loveless creature on earth, are made with love, says God. I should have ordered a Pepsi. Nicolas Cage spits on his toe. God knows that sucking on someone's toes is the most loving act a person could do. Every person getting into heaven has a foot fetish. Satan loves feet, and one day he will come back, and God will be there, waiting with arms open in the parking lot of angels to catch the scales that fall off his wings and rub Vaseline into his burns. In this desert's parking lot, Nick Cage's Tesla, named Sandy, only speaks Korean or Japanese. It doesn't so much drive itself as it does keep everyone in the vehicle alive and awaiting a nuclear airstrike. Nicolas Cage, you are not real. Everything you do is only for effect instead of love, love, love. Nicolas Cage wants to tell God that he loves his wife and homeless people and suicidal tendencies and Pepsi, but he gets the sense he is losing this argument. He gets the sense that God knows things about him he doesn't even know. Probably that he has a urine kink or something fucked up like that. This makes Nicolas Cage hungry. Flagging down a pretty girl. Can I order a tuna melt? He wonders what her piss tastes like. God doesn't need to piss or do a lot of things. He doesn't need to read poetry. One time, God witnessed a homeless person swallow a rock and just kept on walking, didn't do anything. He didn't need to. Nicolas Cage downs his Coke, and God's too. This is ridiculous. Kim Coppola's never stood for this sort of interrogative assault before. He's an atheist, always has been. Here it is. Loveless, affect, sink, sex, dad thing, rollick, amen. This is my prayer. I've been in hundreds of art galleries and you've been in none. I know what love means and it's this. I believe in a greater swamp than yours. Nick Cage exits the diner like the end of a movie. He climbs into Sandy, who revs up like ripping Velcro and says, Hallelujah, giant to space surufu, and they drive away from this desert forever. Just then, the tuna melts arrive, which God eats in exactly 2 bites, and yet, despite the fullness of his tummy, now round and a little paunch, God feels like the loneliest wolf in the universe. Thanks.
Thank you, Rhiannon. What did Nicolas Cage do to you? What did he do to all of us? That's real. Okay, to close out, I have one poem, and I'll do a shameless plug that I'll be hosting an open mic at the Northridge Mall December 27th. I was about to say February. It's this month. Also, shout out to Laura, because it's her birthday month. So happy birthday. And to all the Sagittarius and Capricorns out there. But then comes Aquarius, so. But yeah, it'll be sometime around 7 p.m. and it's at the mall. Somehow the Open Book, it's an independent bookstore, and they were able to have a station right there in the mall. So it's great to support independent bookstores, and yeah, it'll be fun. We're calling it Mall Rats Open Mic, and I wanted to challenge myself to write a mall poem. So this is in the drafts, but it's what I got so far. And it's not even titled yet. I walked past Shoe Palace to get my kicks in place, stopped at an empty kiosk waiting for you, but I got tired of waiting, so I made out with a game girl. And that was my first kiss in front of Zoomies. My tire popped pulling up to Macy's. My other tire popped after picking up funnel cake. And it turns out Pink Floyd t-shirts are all out of stock. Abercrombie broker, Foot Locker liquidation, all must go. It costs so much to be a cool guy. Cultured man is not in fashion. Fascism is the new fast fashion. Shopalypse now, and they're still advertising clickbait deals, deals, deals. Every station refreshed of crocodile glands, every day a holiday, and I may enlist my name on a new store credit card and keep on hopping, window shopping, mapping the city of imported cloth with my boot-cut legs and my exo-sized heart. I'm broke and I love how a woman loops outside a jewelry store, so courteous and convincing, and she's not there. So much power, but she's not there, nor in the parking lot or the Barnes & Noble. Just against the glass, making eye contact, cashing in passerbyers from a screen. Funko Pop baby, we're in a movie, we're in a movie. We're finally brown main characters, man. And we choose to spend the day finding our reflection in a fitting room. And the homies arrive for boba after class, Americana style. We hang out till they kick us out. Thank you. All right. So that concludes the open mic. Thank you all for hanging out and celebrating with us the writing life. This is part of it, exactly. And we have right here one of our editors, Liz Camfield, waving it. It compiles 56 years of history of Beyond Baroque. And this is a very special place, a mecca of art and poetry. And I think you get a glimpse at what the space has meant to hundreds of people, a lot of them writers. So it's not just a collection of poems, but it's rather a more intimate look at how the lives of writers have transpired and what they have to say about this one building, this one place. So I encourage you all to buy it. If you become a member, you get a free copy as well. So definitely consider supporting the space. That way it allows us to continue paying writers to have the space thrive in the West Side and beyond that. So hope to 50 more years of poetry and Beyond Baroque. So thank you all. There's still food out there, plenty of drinks. So stick around. Thank you all. Yeah. Are you on Instagram by any chance?
No.
Okay.
On Facebook.
I can text you.
Okay.